My wife cheated on me with my best friend and recorded it all, but I did something worse to her. My name is Mark, and I am 32 years old. I have been married for 6 of these to Laura, my first love since high school and with whom I have had a romantic relationship since I was 20. Our love story was admired by several people in our social circle, even going so far as to say that we were proof that soulmates existed. For me, she was the perfect woman. Not only was she beautiful on the outside, with deep green eyes, wavy auburn hair that hung to her waist, and a delicate profile, but she was a kind person, with a sweet look, and very passionate about the things she liked. That's why I always marveled that I, the school know-it-all, had won over the girl they wanted the most, especially considering that even Alex, my best childhood friend, had a crush on her. In fact, one of the recurring stories in the meetings that the 3 of us had was the day when Alex had confessed his love for her and she had rejected him. They both laughed as they remembered the way he had cried uncontrollably over Laura's refusal, who months later approached me to tell me that she wanted to go out with me. At first, I thought it was a joke. No girl would talk to me since my appearance was not the most pleasant and I was more of the introverted type. But Laura was patient and made my heart open to her like no one had before. Alex was happy for both of them, or at least that's what he said all the time. Even in his best man speech, my best friend made it very clear that he knew Laura would make me happy for a lifetime, and that's why he felt calm. "There is no woman more perfect for Mark than Laura," he said, and then asked for the toast. I trusted him so much that, when Laura mentioned that she needed a natural model for a campaign for a men's perfume that would be filmed on the outskirts of the city, I suggested Alex. At that time, my friend was going through a difficult financial situation, since as a literature teacher he had not found a stable job in recent years. Even though that wasn't the whole reason, I was glad to be able to lend a hand to who I considered my brother. I would never have imagined that that moment would be the trigger for my relationship to end. "Why don't you go?" Alex asked me the night before everything had happened. We were sharing a few beers while I listened to Laura organize her suitcase before the trip. "I have a lot of work," I answered, and while that was true, it wasn't the reason he wasn't the model. First of all, Laura never suggested that I be her model, even when it came to personal projects. I always ended up looking for handsome men with sculptural bodies and marked features. And even when that made me jealous, I understood the reason why I was not selected by my own wife. Unlike them, I did not have an athletic body, nor features remotely considered beautiful. On some occasions, Laura had commented that it did not register well on camera, a term that photographers used to say that the person was not photogenic. That is why, to prevent my mind from wandering about what kind of man would accompany my wife, I decided once and for all to leave her in the best possible hands. They left in the morning, taking one of my cars to head to the filming location, a beautiful river that had one of the most exuberant waterfalls in the area. Our house was in an exclusive area, something that had allowed me to pay for it with the general manager job I had in a technology company. This meant that the journey would be longer since the town where they planned to shoot was located on the opposite side of the city. The day passed quickly. I was so full of work that I didn't realize that I hadn't received any messages from Laura or Alex during the day, but then I played it down, claiming that perhaps the filming had been very strenuous and they hadn't had a chance to touch their phones. But when I got home and checked my phone, I had the first inkling that something was wrong. On Alex's social networks, there was a video of him in his underwear on a table while my wife seemed to record him from the front. It was a video recorded from another perspective, since they both saw each other on camera. My wife ran her hand playfully over Alex's chest and abdomen while they laughed, at the same time that the people around them seemed to murmur codes among themselves. My stomach contracted with that complicity that seemed to exist between Alex and Laura, but I quickly scolded myself for thinking badly of the 2 people who loved me most in the world. Instead, I responded to the post by making a joke that I wish my wife wasn't planning on changing me for him after seeing him in that state, to which she responded with a laughing emoticon. That was the only message she had received from Alex, while Laura was completely silent. That night I tossed and turned in bed without understanding why I was feeling anxious, but the dream was more powerful than my worry, or my desire to call them both. The next morning I woke up at the same time, only to find Laura entering our house almost stealthily. When he saw me in the room, he was startled. Her bulging eyes surprised me because it looked like I had caught her doing something bad, to which I responded with a frown. "Alex left the car in the garage," he told me. He didn't greet me or say good morning, and his gaze seemed to wander around the place except my face. "He told me to apologize to you for not passing, but that he was hurrying." "Okay. I'm going to have a bath." There I noticed that his hair was disheveled, his clothes were wrinkled, and he seemed to have not slept at all. I assumed it was because she had stayed late working, because if I knew anything about my wife, it was her habit of not coming home until she had finished everything she had pending. Everything seemed normal except for one thing. Laura didn't have her photography equipment with her. That seemed suspicious to me, since there was nothing more sacred to my wife than the material of her work. I related it to stress, and I was worried about his health, so I decided to send messages to find out what had happened and provide my support if he needed it. Later, at lunchtime, I decided to call Alex. I wanted to know if something had happened, since Laura's evasive attitude in the morning and her lack of responses via chat showed that the filming had not been as usual. He agreed to meet me at the restaurant where I used to eat with my co-workers, but that day I was alone. When he arrived, I greeted him as always, and he returned my smile, one he only put on when things were going great for him. I figured that receiving a good payday had lifted his spirits, so I dismissed any negative thoughts or doubts I had previously had. The only thing that caught my attention was the large black bag that Alex had hanging from his shoulder, one that I already knew perfectly well. It was Laura's team. "How was the filming?" I asked. "Fantastic," he said. "If another opportunity arises, don't hesitate to suggest my name again." "Of course. Although I don't think it's necessary," he mentioned. "I think they will continue to request my services." Before leaving, Alex asked me to give the equipment to Laura, who apparently had left it with a colleague who lived near her house. I agreed to do it. However, before we said goodbye, he said something that piqued my curiosity even more. "Tell Laura to share the videos she recorded in the cabin," he mentioned. "Videos in the cabin?" She knows what I'm talking about. During my workday, I couldn't concentrate because I kept thinking about the happy videos of the cabin that Alex had mentioned. I didn't quite understand why, but the fact that they shared so much complicity was beginning to make me feel uncomfortable, even though it was probably some behind-the-scenes stuff that Alex wanted to keep as a souvenir from his first job in the media. But night had come, and Laura was not at home. She had only sent a message saying that she was going to dinner with the work team and not to wait up for her, so I decided to do something that I had not dared to do before: review her work material. In the first camera, I had the recordings they had made of Alex's face and body, who was being instructed how to pose for the scene to work. Not being a model required a lot of time, and this was evident in the countless shots they had taken, but at no time did they seem to be in a cabin. It was only checking the second camera to realize what was happening. At that moment, my stomach flipped again as my heart began to beat fast because of what my eyes were seeing. In the small viewfinder of the camera, you could see his wife's body being embraced by my best friend's hands. They were dressed, but Laura was sitting on his lap while Alex's hand caressed everything he could. However, that did not last long as things quickly escalated. In less than I could perceive, the scene seemed worthy of any adult page. They both looked at the lens where the scene was recorded while they enjoyed pleasure, always from the front and without any shame. With every rise and fall of my wife's body, my heart wanted to jump out of my chest. Listening to my Laura call my best friend's name while she unleashed herself against him was as if multiple daggers were coming straight towards my chest, feeling how anger and sadness began to consume me. I didn't realize when my hands started to shake, but I forced myself to stay steady. Once the video ended, I decided to explore all the content that was in that camera, only to realize that Alex had not been the exception, but the norm. Every man he had ever worked with was there. With each video, I saw her turn into a woman I didn't know, and that began to upset me. The crying of disappointment, anger, and pain consumed me as each video progressed. That's why I didn't know when I did it, but when I realized it was too late, I had thrown all of Laura's equipment against the wall, piece by piece. At that moment, I had not considered what I had done, because I only cared about avenging my wounded ego. "What did you do?" he demanded when he arrived at our house. "How could you do this?" The scream was so heartbreaking that I almost felt sorry for Laura crying over her lost material. But then I remembered that it was the same person who had cheated on me all these years with different people. "How could you do this to me?" I said calmly, even though inside I wanted to break everything in my path. "Did you have a good time with Alex?" Her face paled as thick tears streamed down her face. He tried to stammer a few words, but I decided to leave the room. For the first time, I saw my always sweet wife as she really was. Suffice it to say that the divorce was difficult since I myself had destroyed the evidence of infidelity that prevented him from keeping more than half of the assets that I had obtained through my work. However, Alex had his last good act as a friend before I never saw him again, as he declared in favor of my testimony and then left the city. I can't say that his betrayal hadn't hurt me, but I already had enough punishment seeing that the rumor had spread in the city and that no school wanted to hire an immoral teacher. But the truth is that my action was worse for Laura. The equipment he had destroyed not only cost millions, but it was the only one that contained the original copy of the campaign they were recording. The company that had placed its trust in my ex-wife's work had decided to sue for breach of labor and additional damages. The demand was so great that it ended up being published by every media outlet in the city, generating coverage that would destroy Laura's reputation in that sector. I don't know if my actions were correct, but the truth is that no one can play with fire without accepting the consequences, and both my best friend and my wife understood that the hard way. And now it's your turn. Do you think I did the right thing? What should I have done? The truth was that it was something very hard for me. If you want more confessions like this, I encourage you to like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and we'll see again soon.